And we're continuing with this. The fourth chapter of Mary Poppins opens the door. Nelius, the marble boy, has come alive in the park and is playing with Jane and Michael.
"What happened then?" demanded Jane. "How did you get to our park?" "In a packing case," said Nelius calmly, and laughed at their look of astonishment. "Oh, we always travel that way, you know. My family is very much in demand. People want us for parks or museums or gardens, so they buy us and send us by parcel post. It never seems to occur to them some of us might be lonely." He choked a little on the word, then he flung up his head with a lordly gesture. "But don't let's think about that," he cried. "It's been much better since you two came. Oh, Jane and Michael, I know you so well, as if you were part of my family. I know about Michael's kite and his compass, and the Dalton bowl and Robertson A, and the things you have for supper. Didn't you ever notice me listening and reading fairy tales over your shoulders?"
Jane and Michael shook their heads.
"I know Alice in Wonderland by heart," he went on, "and most of Robinson Crusoe, and everything a lady should know, which is Mary Poppins' favourite. But best of all are the coloured comics, especially the one called Lot of Fun. What happened to Tiger Tim this week? Did he get away safely from Uncle Mopsy?" "The new one comes out today," said Jane. "We'll all read it together." "Oh dear, how happy I am!" cried Nelius. "The Elephant's Child, and a new Lot of Fun, and my legs like the wings of a bird. I don't know when my birthday is, but I think it must be today."
He hugged the dolphin and the book in his arms and capered across the grass.
"Hi, ting-a-ling-a-ling."
Oh, this is the ice cream man. "Hi, ting-a-ling-a-ling, look where you're going," the ice cream man gave a warning cry. He was wheeling his barrow along by the lake. The printed notice in front of it said, "Stop me and buy one, what wonderful weather." "Stop, stop, stop, stop," cried the children wildly as they ran toward the barrow. "Chocolate," said Michael. "Lemon," cried Jane. And the fat little twins put out their hands and gladly took what was given them. "And what about you?" said the ice cream man as Nelius came up shyly beside him. "I don't know what to choose," said Nelius. "I never had one before." "What? Never had an ice? What's the matter, weak stomach? A boy your size should know all about ices. Here." The ice cream man fished inside his barrow and brought out a raspberry bar. "Take this and see how you like it." Nelius broke the bar with his marble fingers. He popped one half in the dolphin's mouth and began to lick the other. "Delicious," he said. "Much better than seaweed." "Seaweed? I should think so. What's seaweed got to do with it? But talking of seaweed, that's a nice big cod." The ice cream man waved his hand at the dolphin. If you took it along to a fishmonger, he'd give you a fancy price." The dolphin gave its tail a flick, and its face looked very indignant. "Oh, I don't want to sell him," said Nelius quickly. "And he isn't just a fish, he's a friend." "A fishy kind of friend," said the man. "Why doesn't he tell you to put on your clothes? You'll catch your death running round stark naked. Well, no offence meant. Ting-a-ling, ting-a-ling." He rode away, whistling and ringing his bell. Nelius glanced at the children out of the corner of his eye, and the three burst out in peals of laughter. "Oh dear," cried Nelius, gasping for breath. "I believe he thinks I'm human. Shall I run and tell him he's made a mistake, that I haven't worn clothes for 2,000 years and never caught even a sniffle?" He was just about to dart away after the barrow when Michael gave a shout. "Look out! Here's Willoughby!" he cried, and swallowed the rest of his ice in one gulp. For Willoughby, who belonged to Miss Lark, had a habit of jumping up at the children and snatching the food from their hands. He had rough, bouncy, vulgar manners and no respect for anyone. But what else could you expect of a dog who is half Airedale and half a retriever and the worst half of both? There he came, lolloping over the grass, sticking out his tongue. Andrew, who was as well bred as Willoughby was common, tripped gracefully after him, and Miss Lark herself followed breathlessly. "Just out for a spin before tea," she trilled. "Such a beautiful day, and the dogs insisted. Good gracious, what is this I see?" She broke off, panting, and stared at Nelius. Her face, already red, grew redder, and she looked extremely indignant. "You wicked, naughty boy!" she cried. "What are you doing to that poor fish? Don't you know it will die if it stays out of water?" Nelius raised a marble eyebrow. The dolphin swung its tail over its mouth to hide a marble smile. "You see," said Miss Lark, "it's writhing in agony. You must put it back in the water this minute."
Oh, I couldn't do that, said Nelius quickly. I'm afraid he'd be lonely without me. He was trying to be polite to Miss Lark. But the dolphin was not. He flipped his tail and wriggled and grinned in a very discourteous manner. Don't answer me back. Fish are never lonely. You are just making silly excuses. Miss Lark made an angry gesture toward the green bench. I do think, Mary Poppins, she said, you might keep an eye on the children. This naughty boy, whoever he is, must put that fish back where he got it. Mary Poppins favored Miss Lark with a stare. I'm afraid that's quite impossible, ma'am. He'd go too far. Far or near, it doesn't matter. He must put it back this instant. It's cruelty to animals, and it shouldn't be allowed. Andrew and Willoughby, come with me. I shall go at once and tell the Lord Mayor. Away she bustled, with the dogs at her heels. Willoughby, as he trotted by, winked rudely at the dolphin. And tell him to put his clothes on. He'll get sunburnt running about like that, shrieked Miss Lark as she hurried off. Nelius gave a little spurt of laughter and flung himself down on the grass. Sunburnt, he choked. Oh, Mary Poppins, does nobody guess I'm made of marble? Replied Mary Poppins, snorting, and Nelius tossed her a mischievous smile. That's what the sea lions say, he said. They sit on the rocks and say, at the sunset. Indeed, she said tartly, and Jane and Michael waited trembling for what was surely coming, but nothing happened. Her face had an answering look of mischief, and the blue eyes and the marble eyes smiled gently at each other. Nelius, she said quietly, you have 10 minutes more. You can come with us to the bookstall and back. And then, he said with a questioning look as he tightened his arms round the dolphin. She did not answer. She looked across the sparkling lake and nodded toward the pedestal. Oh, can't he stay longer, Mary Poppins? The children began to protest. But the eager question froze on their lips, for Mary Poppins was glaring. I said 10 minutes, she remarked, and 10 minutes is what I meant. You needn't look at me like that either. I am not a grizzly gorilla. Oh, don't start arguing, cried Nelius. We mustn't waste a second. He sprang to his feet and seized Jane's hand. Show me the way to the bookstall, he said, and drew her away through the spreading sunlight and over the grassy lawns. Behind them, Mary Poppins lifted the twins into the perambulator and hurried along with Michael. Lightly across the summer grasses ran Jane and the marble boy. His curls flew out in the wind with hers, and her hot breath blew on his marble cheeks. Within her soft, living fingers, the marble had grown warmer. This way, she cried, and tugged his arm and drew him into the lime walk. At the far end, by the far gate, stood the gaily painted bookstall. A bright sign nailed above it said, Mr. Foley, or Mr. Folly. Books, papers, and magazines. You want them? I've got them. A frill of colored magazines hung round the bookstall, and the children raced up. Mr. Folly popped his head through a gap in the frill. He had a round, quiet, lazy face, and looked as though nothing in the world could disturb it. Well, if it isn't Jane Banks and friends, he remarked mildly, I think I can guess what you've come for. The evening news, and a lot of fun, panted Jane as she put down the pennies. Nelius seized the colored comic and skimmed the pages quickly. Does Tiger Tim get away? Cried Michael as he dashed up breathless behind them. Yes, he does, cried Nelius with a shout of joy. Listen, Tiger Tim escapes the clutches of Uncle Mopsy, his new adventures with Old Man Dogface. Watch out for another Tiger Tim story next week. Hooray! Shouted Michael, peering round the dolphin's shoulder to get a look at the pictures. Mr. Folly was eyeing Nelius with interest. That's a fine young whale you got there, Sonny. Seems almost human. Where did you catch him? I didn't, said Nelius, glancing up. He was given to me as a present. Fancy that. Well, he makes a nice pet. And where do you come from? Where's your ma? She's a long way from here, replied Nelius gravely. Too bad. Mr. Foley wagged his head. Dad away too? Nelius smiled and nodded. You don't say. Goodness, you must be lonely. Mr. Foley glanced at the marble boy. And cold as well, I shouldn't wonder, with not a stitch on your bones. He made a jingling noise in his pockets and thrust out his hand to Nelius. There. Get yourself something to wear with that. Can't go around with nothing on. Pneumonia, you know. And chilblains. Nelius stared at the silver thing in his hand. What is it? He asked curiously. That's a half-crown, said Mr. Foley. Don't tell me you never saw one. No, I never did, said Nelius, smiling.
and the dolphin gazed at the coin with interest. Well, I declare, you poor little chap, stark naked and never seen an half-crown. Someone ought to be taking care of you. Mr. Foley glanced reproachfully at Mary Poppins, and she gave him an outraged glare. Someone is taking care of him, thank you, she said, and as she spoke, she unbuttoned her new white jacket and slipped it round Nelius's shoulders. There, she said gruffly. You won't be cold now, and no, thanks to you, Mr. Foley. Nelius looked from the coat to Mary Poppins, and his marble eyes grew wider. You mean I can keep it always? He asked. She nodded and looked away. Oh, dear sweet sea lion, thank you, he cried, and hugged her waist in his marble arms. Look at me, Jane, in my new white coat. Look at me, Michael, in my beautiful buttons. He ran excitedly from one to the other to show off his new possession. That's right, said Mr. Foley, beaming. Much better to be sure than sorry. And the half-crown will buy you a nice pair of trousers. Not tonight, interrupted Mary Poppins. We're late as it is. Now best foot forward and home we go, and I'll thank you not to dawdle. The sun was swiftly moving westward as she trundled the pram down the lime walk. The band at the end of the park was silent. The flowery sunshades had all gone home. The trees stood still and straight in the shadows. The park keeper was nowhere to be seen. Jane and Michael walked on either side of Nelius and linked their hands through his marble arms. A silence was over the human children, and over the marble child between them. I love you, Nelius, Jane said softly. I wish you could stay with us always. I love you too, he answered, smiling. But I must go back, I promised. I suppose you couldn't leave the dolphin, said Michael, stroking the marble fin. Jane looked at him angrily. Oh, Michael, how can you be so selfish? How would you like to spend your life all alone up there on a pedestal? I'd like it if I could have the dolphin and call Mary Poppins a sea lion. I tell you what, Michael, said Nelius quickly. You can't have the dolphin. He's part of me. But the half-crown isn't, I'll give you that. He pushed the money into Michael's hand. And Jane must have the book, he went on. But promise, Jane, and cross your heart, that you'll let me read it over your shoulder, and every week you must come to the bench and read me the new Lots of Fun. He gave the book a last long look and tucked it under her. He gave the book a last long look and tucked it under her arm. Oh, I promise, Nelius, she said faithfully, and crossed her heart with her hand. I'll be waiting for you, said Nelius softly. I never, never forget. Walk up and don't chatter, hissed Mary Poppins as she turned toward the lake. The perambulator creaked and groaned as it trundled on its way, but high above the creak of the wheels, they could hear a well-known voice. They tiptoed up behind Mary Poppins as she walked to the shadowy water. I never done it, the voice protested, and wouldn't, not if you paid me. At the edge of the lake, by the empty pedestal, stood the Lord Mayor and 2 aldermen, and before them, waving his arms and shouting and generally behaving in a peculiar manner, was the park keeper. It's not my own doing, Your Honour, he pleaded. I can look you straight in the eye. Nonsense, Smith, said the Lord Mayor sternly. You are the person responsible for the park statues, and only you could have done it. You might want to confess, advised the first alderman. It won't save you, of course, the second added, but you'll feel so much better. But I didn't do it, I'm telling you, the park keeper clasped his hands in a frenzy. Stop quibbling, Smith, you're wasting my time, the Lord Mayor shook his head impatiently. First, I have to go looking for a naked boy who I hear is maltreating some wretched fish. A salmon, Miss Lark said, or was it a halibut? But now, as if this wasn't enough, I find the most valuable of our statues is missing from its pedestal. I am shocked and disgusted. I trusted you, Smith, and look how you repay me. I am looking. I mean, I don't have to look. Oh, I don't know what I'm saying, Your Grace, but I do know I never touched that statue. And we will pause there.